What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors sits down for what should be a simple chat show interview, only to face relentless provocation and condescension from a host who simply won't let up? In just 46 seconds of brutal back and forth, a beloved talk show would witness its most explosive moment ever captured on live television, ending with a guest walking off set in disgust. Tom Hardy arrived at the Loose Women's studio that morning, expecting a routine promotional interview. He'd been making the rounds, talking about his latest film, charming audiences with his trademark humility and wit. But what unfolded on that stage would become one of the most talked about moments in British daytime television history. The panel that day consisted of Denise Welch, Ruth Langsford, Janet Street Porter, and Nadia Sawalha. Tom walked onto the set to applause, settling into the guest chair with an easy smile. The energy seemed light at first. Ruth began with a warm welcome. "Tom, lovely to have you here. You look fantastic as always," Ruth said. Tom nodded appreciatively. "Thanks for having me. Great to be here." But then Denise leaned forward, and there was something in her expression that should have been a warning sign, a slight smirk, an edge to her voice. "So Tom, before we get into the film, I have to ask," Denise began, her tone dripping with faux concern. "You've had quite the reputation over the years, haven't you? The bad boy image. Do you ever worry that you're just playing yourself in these tough guy roles?" The audience went quiet. Ruth shifted uncomfortably. Tom's smile faltered for just a moment, before he composed himself. "I wouldn't say I have a bad boy image," Tom replied carefully. "I'm an actor. I play characters. That's the job." Denise laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. "Oh, come on, Tom. We've all read the stories, the incidents. You can't tell me there isn't some truth to the roles you choose." Janet Street Porter jumped in, trying to redirect. "Denise, I think what's more interesting is Tom's preparation for roles. Tom, you're known for your dedication to character work." But Denise wasn't finished. She talked right over Janet. No, I think this is important," Denise insisted. "I mean, you dropped out of drama school, didn't you? Some would say you never really learned the craft properly." The audience gasped. You could feel the temperature in the studio drop. Tom's jaw tightened, but he maintained his composure. "I left drama school, yes," Tom said evenly. "But I've spent 20 years learning this craft through work, through experience. I don't think a piece of paper defines whether someone is a real actor." Nadia tried to intervene. "Tom's body of work speaks for itself, Denise. I think we can all agree." But Denise was on a roll now, seemingly energized by the discomfort she was creating. "I'm just saying, there are actors who train classically, who really study the craft, and then there are people who just sort of fell into it," Denise said, waving her hand dismissively. "It's a legitimate question about credibility." Tom sat back in his chair, and you could see him making a choice about how to handle this. He could have gotten angry. He could have fired back. But instead, he tried diplomacy. "Denise, I respect your opinion, but I disagree," Tom said calmly. "Some of the greatest actors in history never went to traditional drama school. It's about the work, not the pedigree." Ruth jumped in again, clearly trying to save the interview. "Let's talk about the film, shall we? Tom, your character in this is quite different from your recent roles." Tom turned to Ruth gratefully. "Yes, actually, this character is much more vulnerable, more emotionally exposed than anything I've done recently. It was a real challenge to find that softness while maintaining the strength that—" "Oh, vulnerable," Denise interrupted, her voice mocking. "Is that what we're calling it? I watched the trailer, Tom. Looks like the same brooding, mumbling performance you always give." The other panelists looked absolutely horrified. Janet's mouth dropped open. Nadia put her hand to her forehead. Ruth looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. Tom's expression changed. The diplomatic mask slipped, and you could see genuine hurt flash across his face before it hardened into something else. Anger, yes, but also disappointment. "I'm sorry, what?" Tom asked quietly. Denise seemed to realize she'd crossed a line, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. "I'm just being honest, Tom. Isn't that what we do here? Have honest conversations? You mumble your way through most of your roles. Half the time, audiences need subtitles to understand what you're saying." The audience was dead silent now. Some people looked genuinely shocked. Others looked away, secondhand embarrassment radiating through the studio. Tom leaned forward, his voice still calm, but with steel underneath. "Denise, I came here to talk about a film that means a great deal to me and the people who made it. I didn't come here to be insulted or to have my entire career dismissed as mumbling. I've worked with some of the greatest directors in the world, actors I've admired my entire life. If you have a personal problem with me, that's fine. But this," he gestured around the studio, "this isn't the place for it." Janet tried to rescue the situation. "Tom, I think what Denise is trying to say, badly I might add, is that you have a very specific style." But Tom raised his hand gently, stopping her. "No, Janet, I appreciate you trying to smooth this over, but I know exactly what Denise is saying, and I think the audience does too." Denise's face flushed red. Whether from embarrassment or anger, it was hard to tell, but she wasn't done yet. "Oh, here we go," Denise said, her voice rising. "The big movie star can't handle a little criticism. Do you know how many actors would love to be in your position? And you can't even take a few honest questions?" Tom shook his head slowly. "Honest questions? Is that what you think these are? You've questioned my training, my talent, my choice of roles, and my diction, all in the span of about 5 minutes. That's not honest questioning, Denise. That's just being rude." Ruth finally found her voice, stronger this time. "Denise, I think perhaps we should move on." But Denise ignored her completely, her attention locked on Tom. "Rude? I'm being rude?" Denise laughed incredulously. "You Hollywood types are all the same. You can dish it out in your films, playing these hard men, these tough guys, but the moment someone challenges you in real life, you crumble." Nadia spoke up firmly. "Denise, that's enough. Tom is our guest." Tom stood up then, not dramatically, not angrily, but with quiet dignity. He removed his microphone pack, carefully placing it on the chair. "What are you doing?" Denise asked, her voice sharp. Tom looked at her directly. "I'm leaving. I don't need this. I don't need to sit here and be disrespected for your entertainment or anyone else's." Denise scoffed. "Oh, please, don't be so sensitive." That's when Tom's composure finally cracked, just a little. His voice rose, not to a shout, but with unmistakable intensity. "Sensitive? Denise, you've spent this entire interview trying to belittle me. And for what? What did I do to you? I walked in here with nothing but respect for you and this show. I've watched Loose Women. I know what you do here. I know you have tough conversations. But there's a difference between tough and cruel. And you've been cruel." The silence that followed was deafening. Janet looked at the floor. Nadia's eyes were wide. Ruth seemed frozen, and Denise, for the first time, seemed at a loss for words, but only for a moment. "If you can't handle the heat, Tom, maybe you shouldn't do interviews," Denise said, her voice cold. Tom let out a short, humorless laugh. "I've done hundreds of interviews, Denise. Thousands, probably. With journalists who've asked me difficult questions, who've challenged me, who've pushed me, and I've never walked out of a single one, because they treated me like a human being. You're not asking difficult questions. You're just being mean, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that's okay." He started to walk toward the edge of the stage. The camera operators didn't know where to point. The audience sat in stunned silence. Ruth stood up. "Tom, please, let's just take a breath and start over." Tom turned back, and his expression softened when he looked at Ruth. Ruth, you're lovely. And Janet, Nadia, you're both great. I have no issue with any of you, but I'm not doing this. He glanced back at Denise. I don't know what I did to upset you, and honestly, at this point, I don't care. But I won't be spoken to like this. Not by anyone. Denise stood up now too, her voice rising. You're being ridiculous. This is live television. You can't just walk off. Tom stopped at the edge of the stage and turned back one final time. Watch me. And that's when Denise made her biggest mistake. Her final, desperate attempt to regain control of the situation. Fine. Go. Run back to Hollywood where everyone tells you how wonderful you are. Some of us live in the real world, Tom, where people don't get special treatment just because they're pretty. The audience audibly gasped. Even Janet looked shocked at that comment. Tom's face registered disbelief. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. Pretty? He repeated, his voice quiet but clear. You think this is about being pretty? Denise, I've worked since I was a kid. I've struggled. I've failed. I've had to fight for everything I've got. And you don't know a single thing about my life, my journey, or what I've been through. You've decided who you think I am based on absolutely nothing. Nadia stood up, moving toward Denise. Denise, stop. Just stop. But Denise shook her off. No, I'm tired of coddling these celebrities. They come on our show. They expect us to fawn all over them, ask soft questions, and make them look good. Well, I'm not doing it. Tom shook his head, a sad smile on his face now. Nobody asked you to coddle me, Denise. Nobody asked for soft questions. I would have happily talked about the challenges of the role, the difficult scenes, the failures along the way. I would have had a real conversation with you, but you didn't want a conversation. You wanted a target. He turned to the audience then, his voice genuine. I'm sorry you all had to witness this. You came here for entertainment, and instead, you got whatever this is. That's not fair to you. Several audience members actually applauded that. A few called out support. One woman shouted, "We love you, Tom." Denise's face went from red to purple. Oh, brilliant. Perfect. The audience is on your side. Of course they are. You're Tom Hardy. You could do anything, and they'd love you. Tom looked at her with something close to pity. They're on my side, because you've been attacking me since I sat down. This isn't about me being famous. It's about you being unkind. Janet finally stood up and walked over to Tom. Tom, I'm so sorry. This isn't how we do things here. Denise is out of line. Denise whirled on Janet. Excuse me? How dare you? We're supposed to be a panel. We're supposed to support each other. Janet's voice was firm. Supporting you doesn't mean watching you bully a guest, Denise. I won't do it. Ruth added quietly, none of us will. Nadia nodded in agreement. This was completely unacceptable. For the first time, Denise seemed to realize she was alone in this. The other panelists, the audience, everyone was against her. But instead of apologizing, instead of backing down, she went on. The attack. Fine, fine. All of you can side with him, but I stand by everything I said. Someone needed to call out the emperor with no clothes, and I did it. You're all too scared of offending the precious celebrities. Tom's voice cut through her rant, quiet and devastating. Denise, I feel sorry for you. I really do. Whatever's going on in your life that made you want to do this to someone today, I hope you work through it, but I'm done here. He walked off the stage then, for real this time. The cameras followed him as he headed toward the exit. Producers rushed toward him, trying to convince him to come back, but he politely declined, never raising his voice, never losing his composure beyond that moment of intensity. Back on the stage, chaos erupted. Denise was arguing with the other panelists. Ruth had her head in her hands. Janet was gesturing angrily at Denise. Nadia was speaking rapidly to a producer. The audience was buzzing with conversation, some people standing, others recording on their phones, despite the no phones policy. One of the producers approached Denise, speaking urgently to her. The microphones picked up fragments of the conversation. "You can't speak to guests that way, Denise." "I'll speak however I want. This is my show, too." "Not anymore, it isn't. You need to leave the stage. Now." That's when everyone realized what was happening. Denise wasn't just being reprimanded, she was being removed. The producer gestured firmly toward the exit, the same direction Tom had gone. Denise's face went through a rapid series of expressions: shock, anger, indignation, and finally a dawning realization of what she'd done. "You're kicking me off my own show?" she asked, her voice suddenly small. The producer didn't waver. "You attacked a guest without provocation. You created a hostile environment, and you've put us in an impossible position. Yes, Denise, I'm asking you to leave." Janet spoke up. "Denise, just go. Please." Denise looked around at the other panelists, searching for support that wasn't there. Ruth wouldn't meet her eyes. Nadia shook her head slowly. Janet just looked disappointed. "After everything I've done for this show," Denise said, her voice breaking slightly. Ruth finally looked up. "And in 5 minutes, you've undone all of it." That was cruel, Denise. Unnecessarily cruel. Denise stood there for a moment longer, seemingly unable to believe this was happening. Then, without another word, she grabbed her notes and walked off the stage, her heels clicking loudly in the silence. The remaining panelists sat in shock. Ruth addressed the camera directly. "We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll figure out what to do next." But the cameras kept rolling, capturing every moment of the aftermath. Janet turned to Nadia and Ruth. "I cannot believe that just happened," Janet said, her voice shaking slightly. Nadia responded, "She was out of control. From the moment he sat down, she was looking for a fight." Ruth added, "Tom was nothing but gracious. Even when he left, he was respectful." What was she thinking? The studio audience could hear all of this. Someone shouted from the crowd, "Tom was brilliant. He handled that so well." Others joined in with agreement. The sentiment was unanimous. Tom Hardy had been the consummate professional in the face of unprovoked hostility. He'd tried to defuse the situation, tried to redirect, tried to be diplomatic, and when that failed, he'd stood up for himself with dignity. Meanwhile, backstage footage would later show Tom speaking with crew members, apologizing for the disruption, thanking them for their work. He took photos with staff who asked, signed autographs, and never once spoke badly about Denise, even when given the opportunity. One crew member was heard asking, "Are you okay, Tom?" Tom's response was telling, "I'm fine. I just don't understand what I did to make her so angry. I genuinely don't." A makeup artist chimed in. "You didn't do anything, love. She was like that before you even arrived. Heard her complaining about celebrity guests in general." Tom just nodded, looking tired. "Well, I hope she's all right. Whatever's going on with her, that can't come from a happy place." Even after everything, his concern was for her well-being. That said everything about the kind of person he was. Back on the set, the producers were making a decision. The show would continue, but with just the 3 remaining panelists. They'd address what happened briefly, then move on to other segments. No more guests for the day, just the panel discussing various topics as they often did. When the cameras came back on, Ruth's face was composed but serious. "We want to address what just happened," Ruth began. "Our guest, Tom Hardy, was treated disrespectfully by one of our panelists. That is not representative of what Loose Women stands for. We pride ourselves on having frank, honest discussions, but there is never an excuse for being cruel or dismissive to anyone, especially not a guest who came here in good faith." Janet added, Tom handled himself with remarkable grace under circumstances that would have made anyone angry. We apologize to him and to all of you watching. Nadia concluded, "We hope Tom knows that his talent and his character spoke for themselves today, and we hope he'll consider coming back someday under better circumstances." The three of them then moved on to other topics, but the energy was subdued. Everyone knew what had happened would overshadow everything else. In the studio audience, people were still processing what they'd witnessed. Many of them had come as fans of the show, regular viewers who enjoyed the panel's dynamic. But what they'd seen today had shaken their perception. One audience member would later describe it as watching someone self-destruct in real time. Denise had started the interview with an agenda, an axe to grind, and she'd refused every opportunity to back down or change course. And Tom, by contrast, had shown everyone what real class looked like. The moment that seemed to resonate most with people was when Tom said he felt sorry for Denise. Not angry, not vindictive, but genuinely concerned. That level of empathy in the face of such hostility was rare. It showed a depth of character that no interview question could have revealed. As the show continued without her, Denise sat in her dressing room, reportedly in tears, beginning to understand the magnitude of what she'd done. But the damage was complete. In 46 seconds of escalating confrontation, she'd turned a promotional interview into a masterclass in how not to treat people. The other panelists finished the show, but their hearts weren't in it. How could they be? They'd just witnessed a colleague destroy her reputation and hurt a genuinely kind person for no reason anyone could understand. Tom left the building quietly, declining to speak to press who had already gathered outside, somehow alerted to the drama. He got into a car and drove away, leaving behind one of the most shocking moments in daytime television history. The whole incident raised questions about how we treat celebrities, about the line between tough questioning and bullying, about what happens when someone decides to use their platform not to enlighten or entertain, but to tear someone down. Tom had come to talk about his art, his craft, the thing he loved. Instead, he'd been forced to defend his entire career, his training, his talent, his very worth as a person. And he'd done so with a level of dignity that made Denise's attacks look even more petty and small by comparison. The three remaining panelists wrapped up the show, clearly rattled. As the credits rolled, you could see them sitting in silence, not their usual chatty selves. They knew they'd been part of something that would be talked about for years to come, and not in a good way. Ruth spoke one final time before they went off air. "Thank you for watching today. It's been quite a show. We'll see you tomorrow." But everyone watching knew tomorrow would be different. How could it not be? The show had just imploded on live television. A beloved guest had been driven away. A longtime panelist had been removed. And all of it had played out in front of cameras and a live studio audience. The incident would spark countless discussions about interview ethics, about the responsibility that comes with a platform, about the difference between being provocative and being cruel. But in the moment, as the show ended and the studio lights dimmed, all anyone could think about was those 46 seconds when everything fell apart. Tom Hardy had walked onto that stage as a guest. He'd walked off as something more, a symbol of grace under fire, of maintaining dignity when others lose theirs, of knowing when to stand up for yourself and when to simply walk away. And Denise Welch had revealed something about herself that no amount of explanation or apology could ever fully undo. In trying to diminish someone else, she'd only diminished herself. The cameras captured it all. Every word, every expression, every moment of the slow-motion disaster. And millions of people watched as a simple interview became a lesson in character, in kindness, in what it means to treat people with respect, regardless of who they are or what they do. Tom's final words to Denise echoed in the empty studio long after everyone had gone home. I feel sorry for you. Not anger, not hatred, not revenge, just pity. And somehow, that was the most devastating response of all.